Welcome to part 2 of moving and looping regions in Logic. I'm just going to continue where I left off in the last video, so I'm going to loop this all the way over here, where the piano finishes. Now to move multiple regions at once, you can either highlight regions like this, and then move them, or you can hold down Shift on your keyboard, select the regions that you want to move, and then move them. And I can loop these two regions at the same time as well. So in the same way that I explained before, make sure you've got both regions highlighted, either like that, or by holding Shift and selecting them. And then when you go to loop a region, you'll loop both of them. So that's how to loop multiple regions. I'm just going to move over the rest of these regions to where I want them to go. So you get the idea. It's pretty simple to do. Now I'm going to loop most of the rest of these audio regions at once. Careful when you're looping something in this way, because notice if I loop it from the violas, I want it all to line up here. But those other three instruments are overshooting. So in this instance, I'm going to loop from the French horn part 1 region. Like that. And at the end, I'll just have another loop of the piano and cello, and one final loop of the piano by itself. So that's now spread out. The track slowly builds up. And altogether, it's over 4.5 minutes long. So we've got a complete track that goes from a beginning right to an end. I hope that was clear. That's essentially how to move regions around your project and also loop them. So 2 things there really. For the next part of this video, on more of a technical note, I'm just going to bring up a previously saved version of this track and go over something that might be useful to know. It could save you any potential headaches down the line. So this is the project before any of the moving and looping that I did, and notice that a few of these regions are sticking out. Now in a way that's fine until you start looping. So just looking at this region, for example, the note starts at approximately the start of bar 5, but the region has started at bar 4. Now if I go to loop this, it's going to include bar 4 in the loop, which is an extra unneeded bar. So the loop is sort of shifted along an extra bar, which can cause you problems. See, it starts a bar later than I want it to. There's a little gap there. So for every repeat, you've got that unneeded bar. And to stop that happening, I'm just going to trim this region to the start of bar 5. So when the region loops back on itself, I won't have an extra bar at the start of each loop. It will just loop back to where I want it to loop back to, which is the start of bar 5. So before looping, I needed to do the same thing here. And also here at the end. And the reason you might get that little bit extra at the start and end of a region, in this case with the MIDI, is that I've technically played into the next bar. So with this, for example, I held the note slightly longer than intended, and that spilled over into another bar. And with the ones at the start, I played the note unintentionally ever so slightly early. So it just started the region a bar earlier than I intended. So essentially I'm just trimming all of these so that I've got an exact solid 16 bars of a region. So when I go to loop these regions, there shouldn't really be any inconsistencies or problems with extra bars that I don't want. I'm looping concise 16 bar chunks, so watch out for that. One more thing about the MIDI notes. Now, this is a really small thing, but I thought I'd just touch on it. Now, as I said before, you might get a region starting a bit early because you may have played in a note slightly early. Look at this part here. I'll take the region back to where it was. And again, that happened because this note is played in slightly early. And let's say you wanted to loop this. So you now already know that you don't want to end up looping this extra bar. So you trim it, and then you loop it. And the loop is fine. It's looping nicely, but just be careful, because if I were to take the playhead back to bar 5 here, so exactly at the start of bar 5, notice that when I press play, I'm not getting any sound from this note. It doesn't happen on the loops. It just happens to this first note when I play from exactly the start of bar 5. And the reason that's happening is because right now Logic won't play a MIDI sound where the playhead starts midway through a note. If the playhead is coming up to a note, or the playhead is exactly where a note starts, it will play that note. But not if you start during the course of a note. Like that. And you might be thinking, well, isn't that the start of the note? But remember, I trimmed the region. I didn't trim or move the note itself. So the note is technically there. I just can't see it in the main window. If I open up the editing window, you can see where the note lies. So if I play from the start of bar 5, I'm not going to hear anything, because technically it's starting playback midway through the note. So there are a few ways around it. Firstly, you could just place the playhead a bit earlier, so you catch the note. Or secondly, you could manually move the note or quantize it to start exactly when the region starts. So you know that whenever you play from the start of the region, you'll also be playing from the start of the note. And there's no danger in missing that note. Or thirdly, you can use the MIDI chase tool, which essentially lets you hear a MIDI sound play, even though you started halfway through it. So you could start playback here, and you would hear that note. To be honest, I kind of think MIDI chase should just be a default setting anyway, because it would save doing what I just mentioned. But yeah, it's not a default setting. I've done a separate video on using the MIDI chase tool, so if you're interested in using that, you can check out that video. So you could have your note like that, use MIDI chase, and you can start the playhead from bar 5 with no problems. I'm not using it right now, so that's why it's not playing. But yeah, I know that was kind of a long explanation for something so small. I've probably gone a bit over the top in terms of little details there. But you never know, it might save you some frustration in future, where you might be playing something like this, and you're thinking, what is happening? Why can't I hear the note? Yeah, it's a bit annoying and it's fiddly. But yeah, I hope you got something out of this video.